Hello everyone, Ken here, and I thought the best way to start the new year off would be with a data science project. This would also be great for helping me build momentum into the 66 Days of Data Challenge. In this case, I'll be using some of the data from one of the latest Kaggle competitions. If I get done with this analysis in time, which is doubtful, I'll even try to submit it. I'll be doing the Kaggle competition based off the 2020 Kaggle Developer Survey. Survey data is a very common form of data collection, and I think that this is a really good and educational use case. This is also relatively related to my data science project from scratch series, understanding the domain of data science, so we might even be able to expand on our findings there. I thought this would be a great project because it can help inform my audience about some of the realities of working in the data science domain. It's nice for me to say that you should learn certain things or do certain things. It means a lot more if I can legitimately back those statements up with data. This will be a fun experiment to learn more about this field through the data collected on it. This will be part one of a three-part series as well. In this video, part one, I'll show you how to join a Kaggle competition, read about the competition and the analysis to understand how it's going to be evaluated. I'll also show you how to get the data with the Kaggle API, and I'll start going through my process of reviewing other people's public kernels and also coming to some questions that I want to ask of the data. In part two, I'll do some exploratory data analysis. And in part three, I hope to answer some of the questions that I'll generate in this video. I've yet to actually do this analysis. I'm doing it as I make these videos. So if there's any tools you'd like me to use, this is primarily an EDA analysis. So I'm looking and thinking of using Plotly, maybe Altair. I've done a lot with Matplotlib, so I'd like to mix it up. In the comment section, let me know what you think I should use. I'll be uploading one of these videos per week for the next 3 weeks. And now I'll pass it to other camera angle Ken. Okay, so first I'm going to take you through how to actually join the competition. This is something that's relatively easy. So you just go to kaggle.com. Let's just go to the normal website. We're going to click compete, and then we'll see all the competitions here. You'll click on this one. And if you haven't joined yet, you'll see a button that looks like, it looks like this. You want to click that and get involved. The next thing that I do whenever I join a competition is to just read all of the information that there's about it. So I want to read the description. We'll see that this survey has been administered in 2017, 2018, and 2019. This year, there was 20,000 survey responses, which is a really high number for at least any survey that I've put out. There's also a $30,000 prize. And something that I think is really important to look at is the evaluation. So it's down here, but let's look at it in isolation. So we're going to look at the composition. So is there a clear narrative thread? Are you telling a good story with the data, and can you back up any claims that you make with data? Is your work original? Are people, whoever's looking at this, going to find something new from it, something novel? And documentation. Is this well documented? Can people follow along with it? Those are three good things in any project. Something that you should have in your GitHub, something that I look for whenever I'm evaluating a project of a candidate I'm looking to hire. So this is a really good practice, and it's really good to understand how these things are being evaluated. This is not a traditional competition where you're trying to optimize a score. You're actually submitting a workbook where you're telling a story, where you're doing an exploratory data analysis. This is inherently valuable. I mean, people ask like, oh, how do you quantify this? Well, they're willing to give $10,000 to the first place prize for an EDA, which means to me, like, this exploratory data analysis, like, there's absolutely a ton of value in this type of analysis in general. It's not all about just building models and optimizing them. So the next thing we do is we generally look at the data. We go through and we can see that there's basically 355 columns. But after looking at the actual data, there's only 35 questions. So for each of the questions, if there's multiple answers you could give, each of those have an individual column. So that's a constraint we have to consider when we're going through and we're trying to understand, trying to evaluate this data at a later date. So the next thing I want to do is just download the data, and I'm going to do that using the Kaggle API. So in order to do that, we have to just download the API. I'm going to link this in the description, but you have to like get an authentication key, and you have to link that up. It's a little bit more in depth than I want to go through in this tutorial, but after you get it working, it's very simple to use. So for example, here, I'm just going to make a new terminal window, and then I'm going to change to documents. That's embarrassing. And I'm going to make a folder, survey data. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to change into it. And then now we can just run our Kaggle command here. We just do Kaggle competitions download C Kaggle array 2020, and it should download. So now we can see that we have our zipped data in there. We just have to unzip it. So you just do unzip Kaggle survey zip. And then now we can see we have that data. We can start working with it locally. So I'm doing this locally because I'm trying to get in the practice of using my my Z4 tower for data science projects. This isn't going to be a heavy lifting project, but it's cool to be able. I'm VPNing into my. I'm not VPNing. I'm remoting into my my big powerful computer, which runs Ubuntu through this interface. HP has a pretty cool product called it's Z Central Remote Boost, and it lets me use any of my computers to log in to my more powerful Z desktop to be able to do all this analysis and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get used to working with that. It's been really a smooth experience so far, and hopefully this will help me to do better Kaggle competitions that do require more advanced computing. So let's jump into what I actually do next. So we're just gonna open a Jupyter Notebook. And we're going to take some notes in here. We're just going to make a new Python 3 notebook, and we're just going to take some notes. Can you see that? We're going to take some notes as we go. And so we're just going to do notes. So the next thing I do is I go through the data, and then I go through all of the different a couple of the different notebooks that are out there. So I'll look at, hey, what are the top 5 notebooks that people have built already, and see if I can get some inspiration from those, see if I can drum up some questions associated with that. So let's first look at some of the actual questions that have come up. Supplementary data, and then answer choices. Here we go. So let's just pop that up there. And so we can see all of the questions that were answered here. What I recommend you do is go through this on your own and drum up some of the questions that you can find. Also, feel free to leave some questions that you are seeing from this data that you would like answered. So I'm not going to go through all of these. So starting at question 9, it's a lot about the different tools that are used. And I think the tools that are used are very interesting, but they're interesting in the scope of who they're being used by. So the age is very interesting. Do people that are older or younger use different tools? I think gender is very interesting. I think gender is also a very poignant topic in data science. There are definitely a lot more men than women in the field. And is there a difference in, one, the tools that women use, the positions that they have, the income that they make, and can we build a model to understand that better? Tools or education or those types of things across countries are also very interesting. How much education you need for the field. So I think this is something I really want to delve into. I get asked all the time, do you need a master's degree for data science? We'll get some quantitative evidence either saying that maybe you do or more likely you do not need one. Also, we'll look at the different types of roles that people have in this field, or like what they're called, and see if there are different skill sets that are associated with those. You know, we can look at the programming experience, the coding languages. I think all of those will be kind of subcategories of understanding the broader, like understanding these things by role rather than just the questions in isolation. So I didn't want to spend too much time there. I highly recommend going through all of the questions and formulating some of your own questions that you would hope to answer based on the data collected from these. The next thing that I do, again, I go here, I look at notebooks. I almost always rank these from most votes to least votes, and I'll go through and I'll open basically the top 5. So I go through these notebooks and I say, okay, what can I learn from them? So as we see here, we see what the age distribution looks like. We see, like what the gender distribution is like. So I was right. There's a lot more men, at least that answer this survey, than women. So let's just go back to our notes here. Oops. And like one thing we want to look at is like gender differences, understanding them. Let's also look at the different skills by position. So a lot of these, are really interesting. It looks like this person is very much taking the approach of, hey, let's look at the question in isolation and try and answer these things. This gets to answer a little bit of, do you need a master's degree for data science? It looks like more people than not have them, but it doesn't seem to be the case. We should also look at this by position because it's not all data scientists that are answering these questions. So experience, whatever that might be. And there's a lot of these notebooks. A lot of these are really good. I think this one, the visuals are absolutely stunning. I would love to make visuals like this. It looks like this person used Plotly. Like this is all done in code, which is incredible to me. So maybe I'll take a stab at Plotly. I doubt I'll have similar results, but it'd be cool to at least try and recreate or try and expand on some of those things. As you can see, a lot of these are really well documented, so they help explain what the analysis is. It tells a very good story to you, and that's kind of the goal of this competition. So does education level affect analysis? A lot of these are really good. I'm going to link all of these in the description of my video, everything that I looked through. So at the end of the day, after I go through these, I'll eventually come up with a list of questions. So I started with this list of like gender differences and skills by position. But I also think that, let's just kind of keep going down on things that come into my head. So like, I think pay differences based on skills and based on coding, or that would be tools, coding ability, languages. Those are all very interesting. I mean, maybe we just seek to understand, just like in my project from scratch series, like what impacts your pay as a data scientist. So if you're a student and you want to maximize your income after school, like what things should you study? What tools should you pick up? Like what should you learn? So we also want to understand like what opportunities come from higher education. Might have spelled that wrong still, but it's okay. And I'm also fascinated with like what isn't answered. So what did people leave blank the most? Is that education? Can we see that by culture? Like that would be interesting if Americans are very comfortable with sharing how much money they make, where people from other cultures might not be. I think that would be a very interesting thing to look at. So after I build these questions, then I have some framework to work off to start going through and building out this analysis. So the first question I'll probably answer in the next video is this one. So the different skills by position. In the following video, I might go through and answer like gender differences. I think building a regression model or a couple different regression models to try and understand the impact of gender or the impact of some of these other things on income could be very, very fascinating and interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the one that I produce next week, where I go into these next steps of the analysis. I'll actually do some coding rather than just talking and flipping around different web pages. So please stay tuned for that. As usual, good luck with your data science journey.